Dad's silent revenge.
When I found that email marked strategic separation plan in my wife's laptop at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, I knew my 30-year marriage was over. But what really got me was the line that read, "Henry won't see this coming. He's too trusting and methodical to suspect anything. My name is Henry Thompson. I'm 58 years old, a construction engineer who built my consulting company from nothing with my wife Patricia over 3 decades. I thought I knew her completely. Patricia and I met in college back in 1987. She was studying marketing. I was in engineering. We got married young in 1993, started Thompson Construction Consulting in our garage in 1994, and raised 2 sons who are now 28 and 26. I handled the technical side and project management. She ran marketing and client relations. It seemed like the perfect partnership. But that night, sitting in our home office in our Connecticut house, staring at her Dell laptop screen while she slept upstairs, everything I believed about my life crumbled. The email wasn't just about divorce. It was a detailed 18-month plan to systematically strip me of everything we'd built together. The plan was sophisticated, written to her lawyer, Charles Wright. Patricia had been working with him for 3 years, slowly moving assets, undervaluing our company, and preparing to claim I was an absent partner who contributed little to the business success. She'd even been spreading rumors to our professional contacts that I was becoming unreliable and considering early retirement due to stress issues. I scrolled through email after email, my coffee growing cold beside me. There were messages about asset protection strategies and discussions about how to minimize Henry's perceived contributions to business growth. One particularly damning email outlined how she planned to claim I'd become a liability to client relationships. But here is what Patricia didn't understand about engineers. We document everything. For 30 years, I'd kept meticulous records of every project, every contract, every business decision. I had backup files stored in 3 different locations, including a safety deposit box at First National Bank. When you're responsible for million-dollar construction projects, you learn that details matter and proper documentation can save your career and sometimes people's lives. I printed that email and 47 others I found in her hidden folder labeled Personal Legal. Then I spent the rest of the night going through our financial records, cross-referencing bank statements with project invoices and expense reports. What I discovered made my hands shake. Patricia had been systematically siphoning money from Thompson Construction Consulting for 3 years. Not just small amounts for personal expenses. She'd created fake vendor accounts with names like Meridian Marketing Solutions and Strategic Business Development LLC. She'd inflated legitimate marketing expenses by 200% and charged personal trips to Boston and New York as client development meetings. The numbers were staggering. Over 36 months, she'd stolen nearly $283,000 from our joint business. I pulled up our QuickBooks files and started making spreadsheets, something I'd done thousands of times for construction projects. The evidence was all there in black and white, and then there was Alex Martinez. Alex was 35, worked as a project manager for Hartwell Development, one of our major clients, and had been having an affair with my 55-year-old wife for over 2 years. The emails between them weren't just romantic. Alex was helping Patricia undervalue our contracts with Hartwell and steering other potential projects away from Thompson Construction toward his cousin's competing firm, Martinez Brothers Construction. They were planning to start their own consulting business once Patricia divorced me and walked away with half our assets. The business plan was already drafted. Thompson Martinez Consulting would launch with Patricia's client relationships and Alex's industry connections, funded by the money she'd taken from me. I sat in that office until sunrise, methodically printing and organizing evidence. My engineering brain was already formulating a plan. Patricia wanted to play chess. Fine, but she'd just shown me all her moves in advance. The next morning, Patricia acted completely normal. She made coffee in our kitchen, asked about my schedule for the day, even mentioned planning a weekend getaway to Vermont to see the fall foliage. The level of deception was breathtaking. For 3 years, she'd been living a double life, and I'd been completely oblivious. "You seem tired," she said, pouring coffee into my favorite mug, the one that said "World's Greatest Engineer" that she'd given me for Father's Day 5 years ago. "Everything okay. Just had trouble sleeping," I replied, watching her face for any sign of guilt or nervousness. There was nothing. Patricia had always been good at compartmentalizing, but this level of calculated deception was something else entirely. Maybe you should take a few days off, she suggested, sitting across from me at our kitchen table. You've been working so hard on the Morrison project. I can handle things at the office. I'd bet she could. Probably clean out the remaining accounts while I was gone. I decided to play along. If Patricia wanted to underestimate the methodical, trusting engineer, it'd give her exactly what she expected to see. But I needed to move fast. That email mentioned accelerating the timeline, and I suspected she was planning to file for divorce within the next month. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly gathered more evidence while maintaining the facade of a trusting husband. I used my knowledge of digital systems to recover deleted files from our company servers. Our IT setup wasn't sophisticated, but I designed it myself back in 2008, and I knew every backup protocol and recovery method. Working late in the office after Patricia went home, I found records of altered contracts, fake invoices, and email chains between Patricia and Alex discussing their exit strategy. The digital forensics were damning. She'd been sloppy about covering her tracks, probably assuming I'd never think to look. I also reached out to Rebecca Phillips, a forensic accountant who'd helped us with complex project audits before. Rebecca was sharp, thorough, and most importantly, discreet. I told her I was concerned about some irregularities in our books and asked her to do a comprehensive analysis. "Henry, what exactly are you looking for?" she asked during our meeting at Murphy's Diner, away from the office. "I think someone might be stealing from us," I said carefully. "I need to know how much and for how long." Rebecca nodded. She'd seen this before with family businesses. "I'll need access to all financial records going back at least 3 years. Bank statements, QuickBooks files, expense reports, everything. You'll have them by tomorrow." Meanwhile, Patricia became bolder about her deception. She started working late more often, claiming she was pursuing a big new client opportunity with some company I'd never heard of. She'd come home at 9 or 10 p.m., smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine, and act irritated when I asked simple questions about her day. "You're being paranoid, Henry," she said one evening when I asked about her late meeting. "I'm trying to grow our business, and you're acting like I'm doing something wrong." The gaslighting was subtle but persistent. When I mentioned that our office supplies expenses seemed high, she suggested I was losing track of details and maybe needed to step back from the financial side. When I questioned a client invoice that seemed inflated, she accused me of micromanaging and not trusting her judgment. But I kept playing my role. I even started leaving earlier from the office, telling Patricia I was feeling tired and needed more rest. She seemed pleased by this, probably thinking her psychological campaign was working. During this time, I also started documenting everything she said and did. Every late night, every suspicious phone call, every time she claimed to be somewhere she wasn't. Engineers are good at pattern recognition, and the patterns were becoming clear. The most revealing moment came when I ran into Jeff Hartwell, owner of Hartwell Development, at the hardware store on a Saturday morning. "Henry, haven't seen you much lately," Jeff said, genuinely friendly. "Patricia's been handling most of our meetings." "Yeah, she's been taking on more of the client relations," I replied, fishing for information. "How's the Riverside project going?" Jeff looked confused. "Riverside? We're not working with you guys on anything called Riverside. In fact, Patricia mentioned you might be scaling back operations, said you were thinking about early retirement." My blood ran cold, but I kept my expression neutral, just exploring options for the future. "Well, I hope you don't retire completely. You're the best project engineer we've worked with. Patricia's great with the business side, but you're the one who actually knows how to get things built right." That conversation confirmed my worst suspicions. Patricia wasn't just stealing money. She was actively sabotaging our client relationships to make me look incompetent and expendable. Rebecca called me the following Tuesday with her preliminary findings. "Henry, you need to sit down for this," she said over the phone. "Can you meet me at my office this afternoon?" I drove to Rebecca's office in downtown Hartford, my stomach churning. Her expression when I walked in told me everything I needed to know. "It's bad, isn't it? It's systematic theft over 3 years," she said, spreading printouts across her conference table. "Fake vendor payments, inflated expenses, unauthorized transfers. She's taken $283,000 from the business accounts. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $300,000 stolen from our joint business over 3 years. Money that should have been reinvested in equipment. used for employee bonuses, or saved for our retirement. There is more, Rebecca continued. She's been systematically undervaluing your contracts in the company books. When you bill a client $50,000 for a project, she's only recording $35,000 in revenue. The difference gets moved to these fake vendor accounts. Why would she undervalue our income to make the business look less profitable than it really is? In a divorce, that would reduce your asset value significantly. Rebecca showed me spreadsheets that painted a clear picture. Thompson Construction Consulting wasn't the modestly successful firm Patricia claimed it was. Based on actual contract values and legitimate expenses, we were worth closer to $2.8 million, not the $1.6 million Patricia had been reporting to our accountant. She's been preparing for this divorce for years, Rebecca concluded. This isn't impulsive, it's calculated financial fraud. I thanked Rebecca and asked her to prepare a detailed report. Then I drove to the office where Patricia was on the phone with someone, speaking in low, intimate tones. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call. That was the Morrison client, she said quickly. They want to schedule another meeting. I nodded, but Id clearly heard her say, I love you too, before hanging up. The breaking point came that Thursday evening. Patricia announced over dinner that she wanted to discuss our future at Romano's Italian restaurant, the same place where WED celebrated our 10th anniversary. I knew exactly what was coming. Romano's was packed that Thursday night, filled with couples celebrating anniversaries and families enjoying dinner together. The irony wasn't lost on me as Patricia and I sat in the same corner booth where WED toasted our future 20 years earlier. Henry, I think we need to be honest about where our marriage is heading, Patricia said over her glass of Chianti. She'd ordered the most expensive bottle on the wine list, which should have been my first clue about what was coming. I played my part perfectly. I set down my fork, looked genuinely shocked, and asked the questions she expected. What do you mean? Have I done something wrong? Are you unhappy? Patricia had her script ready. We've grown apart over the years. You've become more focused on the technical work, less involved in growing the business. I feel like I'm carrying the load for both of us. The lies came so smoothly. According to Patricia, Ed'd become disengaged from client relationships, resistant to new opportunities, and stuck in old ways of thinking. She painted herself as the dynamic business developer while portraying me as dead weight. I think it might be time to consider separation, she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand with fake sympathy. I know this is hard to hear. I asked about counseling, whether there was someone else, if we could work things out. Patricia deflected everything while laying the groundwork for her financial ambush. I think we should keep this amicable, she said. We built the business together. But let's be realistic about who's been driving growth recently. Maybe it's time for you to fully retire and let me buy out your share. The offer was insulting, $400,000 for my half of a business I knew was worth at least $8 million. But I nodded thoughtfully, like I was seriously considering it. I need some time to think about this, I said, playing the confused husband perfectly. Patricia seemed pleased with my reaction. Take all the time you need. But Henry, I hope we can handle this like adults. I don't want lawyers getting involved in making things complicated. Of course she didn't want lawyers involved. Lawyers would discover her embezzlement scheme. That weekend, Patricia went on a sudden business conference in Boston, though she forgot to mention which conference or which hotel. While she was gone, I made my final preparations. I contacted Timothy Nelson, the most aggressive divorce attorney in Hartford County. Timothy had a reputation for destroying opponents who tried to hide assets or commit fraud. His retainer was expensive, but his track record was perfect for what I needed. Mr. Thompson, tell me exactly what you've discovered, Timothy said during our Saturday morning meeting at his office. I laid out everything: the emails, the financial records, Rebecca's forensic analysis, the fake vendor scheme, the affair with Alex Martinez. Timothy listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on his yellow legal pad. This is systematic fraud, he said finally. Your wife has been stealing from the marital estate while planning to defraud you in divorce proceedings. Shiz also committed perjury if Shiz filed any financial documents with false information. What are my chances in court? Timothy smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. With this level of documentation, she doesn't have a chance, but we need to move fast. If she suspects she might try to move more assets or destroy evidence. I also made the painful decision to call both our sons, Stephen and Daniel. This was the hardest part because I knew Patricia had been subtly poisoning them against me for months, planting seeds about my midlife crisis and how I was becoming difficult to work with. Stephen, our 28-year-old, agreed to meet me for lunch on Sunday at the Olive Garden near his apartment. "Dad, are you okay?" he asked as soon as we sat down. "Mom's been worried about you. She says you've been stressed and maybe drinking too much." The accusation stung because it was completely false. Edie had maybe 3 beers in the past month, all during Red Sox games on TV. "Stephen, I need you to know that your mother and I are probably getting divorced." His face went pale. "What? Why? I mean, you guys seemed fine at Christmas. She's been having an affair for 2 years. She's also been stealing money from our business." I could see the disbelief in his eyes. "Dad, that doesn't sound like Mom. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding something? I have proof. Emails, financial records, forensic accounting reports." Stephen looked uncomfortable. "Mom said you might say things like this. She said you've been paranoid lately about business stuff." The manipulation ran deeper than I'd realized. Patricia had been preparing our sons for this conversation, setting up a narrative where I was the unstable one making wild accusations. "I know this is hard to believe," I said carefully, "but I need you and Daniel to know the truth before this gets ugly." That evening, I called Daniel, our 26-year-old, and had essentially the same conversation. Both sons were skeptical, protective of their mother, and worried about my mental state. Patricia's psychological campaign had been thorough. On Monday morning, Patricia filed for divorce. Her lawyer immediately requested financial disclosure and temporary spousal support, claiming I was the primary breadwinner and she needed immediate assistance to maintain her standard of living. Timothy and I were ready. We'd spent Sunday evening preparing our counterattack, and it was going to be devastating. We filed our response the same day Patricia's papers were served. Along with contesting the divorce terms, we requested an immediate forensic audit of all business accounts and alleged systematic financial fraud and embezzlement. We also requested an emergency freeze on all company assets to prevent further theft. The look on Patricia's face when Charles Wright called her with our filing was something I wish I could have seen in person. Patricia called me that evening, and I could hear the fury in her voice even before she spoke. "What do you think you're doing, Henry? I'm trying to handle this civilly, and you're making wild accusations about fraud." "I found the emails, Patricia. All of them, including your strategic separation plan." The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds. I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew. "I don't know what you think you found, but I found $283,000 in fake vendor payments over 3 years. I found your correspondence with Alex about stealing our clients and starting your own business. I documented all of it, Patricia. Every fraudulent invoice, every fake expense report, every lie you told." Another long silence. "You're making a mistake, Henry. This will get ugly if you keep pushing these ridiculous theories. It's already ugly. You made it ugly 3 years ago when you started stealing from our business to fund your affair." The legal battle that followed was brutal. Patricia's strategy was predictable but vicious. She claimed I was having a mental breakdown, that I was paranoid and delusional about business matters. She brought in Dr. Abanda Foster, a psychologist who testified that I exhibited signs of late-onset paranoia and financial obsession typical of aging men, facing retirement anxiety. But Timothy was ruthless in his preparation. We had digital forensics experts analyze our company servers and recover deleted files. We had handwriting experts verify Patricia's signature on fraudulent documents. Rebecca Phillips presented her devastating forensic analysis, showing exactly how Patricia had systematically stolen from our joint business. Most importantly, we had Alex Martinez, Timothy's private investigator, a retired state trooper named Gary Reynolds, had been tracking Alex for weeks. What we discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Alex wasn't just Patricia's lover and business accomplice. He was married with 2 young children and had been embezzling from Hartwell Development to fund his affair with my wife. When Timothy threatened to expose Alex to his wife, his employer, and the district attorney's office, Alex cracked immediately. He agreed to testify about Patricia's plan in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The deposition was devastating. Alex admitted that Patricia had approached him with the separation plan 18 months ago, not the other way around. Shed asked him to help undervalue our contracts with Hartwell and steer other business away from Thompson Construction. In return, Shed promised him a 40% stake in her new consulting firm once she divorced me and took half our assets. She told me Henry was basically dead weight in the business. Alex testified. She said he hadn't brought in a new client in years and was just coasting on old relationships. Alex also confirmed the $233,000 in stolen funds, admitting Head helped Patricia set up the fake vendor accounts and had even received $35,000 personally for his cooperation. But Patricia wasn't finished fighting. As the evidence mounted against her, she became more desperate and vindictive. She started spreading rumors in our professional community that I was emotionally abusive and controlling. She claimed I'd threatened her and that she feared for her safety. This backfired completely when our longtime employees came forward to testify. Nicholas Anderson, who'd worked for Thompson Construction for 15 years, testified that Patricia had been acting secretively for months and had pressured him to falsify financial records. Mrs. Thompson asked me to categorize her personal credit card expenses as business costs. Nicholas testified during his deposition when I refused and said Mr. Thompson would notice during his quarterly reviews. She told me Mr. Thompson wasn't paying attention to financial details anymore and wouldn't catch it. Two other employees confirmed similar pressure from Patricia to alter records and hide expenses. The trial lasted 3 weeks in Judge Margaret Walsh's courtroom. Timothy systematically presented our evidence while Patricia's lawyer, Charles Wright, struggled to defend the indefensible. The forensic evidence was overwhelming, and Alex's testimony destroyed any remaining credibility Patricia might have had. When Patricia took the stand, she was combative and defensive. Timothy's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Thompson, you testified that you were unaware of these financial irregularities in your own company? I trusted our bookkeeping system and focused on client development. Yet you personally signed every one of these fraudulent vendor payments. I may have made some errors in judgment, but I was trying to grow our business. Mrs. $383,000 isn't an error in judgment. It's systematic embezzlement. Judge Walsh had seen enough. Her ruling was swift and brutal. This court finds clear and convincing evidence of financial fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty by the defendant, she announced. Mrs. Thompson has systematically stolen from the marital estate while planning to defraud her husband in divorce proceedings. Patricia was ordered to pay back the $283,000 in stolen funds plus penalties and interest, totaling $340,000. I was awarded 75% of all marital assets, including full ownership of Thompson Construction Consulting. Patricia would receive $420,000 total from the sale of our house and her retirement accounts, barely enough to cover her legal fees and tax obligations. But the real victory came 6 months later. Both our sons approached me after they'd had time to process everything. "Dad, I owe you a huge apology," Stephen said when he came to my new office. "We should have believed you from the beginning." "She manipulated all of us for years," Daniel added. "I can see that now. Today I run Thompson Construction Consulting with renewed energy and purpose. Stephen has joined me as a junior partner, and Daniel helps with marketing and business development. We're doing better than ever financially, and I sleep well knowing that methodical preparation and solid documentation beat sophisticated deception every time." Patricia's consulting business folded after 4 months. Alex was fired from Hartwell Development and lost his house in his own divorce. As for me, I was 58 when my marriage fell apart, but I'm 60 now and I've never been more confident about my future. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't anger or revenge, it's patience and a good filing system. When someone underestimates your attention to detail, they've already lost the war. The biggest mistake cheaters make is thinking their loyal partner's trust makes them stupid. Trust isn't weakness, it's just giving someone enough rope to hang themselves with.